thinking what day and what time, because it's all going to be in Tampa. It'd be great, so we could all go in there and either put our fingers on our noses or give you a thumbs up there. Okay. So
and wear a pirate outfit.
Yeah. So Des, do you want to start off, or
yeah, that sounds great. Dr. Van Dillen, I don't think I have the times on when this is being presented yet. If you have that, great. If not, we'll move forward.
I don't, but
Okay.
But we can. I'm gonna try to put that in the chat while you're talking.
Yeah,
Yes,
no,
good.
that sounds great. So this was actually take 2 of a study that we actually did probably 10 years ago, maybe 9 or 10 years ago, and learned a whole bunch from the first round of the study. So what we initially put out, and about 10 years ago, we're talking about putting ultrasounds in the field, was pretty novel. And so what we tried to do is we wanted to show a non-inferiority study showing that our crews, after some training, were able to produce images at least non-inferior, at least as good as trained residents who had completed ultrasonography rotations and were at least senior residents, so 2nd or 3rd years. And so we got a standardized model. We actually did a training session with our crews. And the first round of the study, which was a really long time ago, we found that the training was not long enough. It was not comprehensive enough. And we found that this was a negative study, unfortunately. So our crews received 2 full days of ultrasound training and 1 hands-on, and then had a follow-up session. We found that that was not enough. And so we actually replicated this study a couple years ago using a more intensive model. So basically we had a 1-day, 5-hour course of ultrasound teaching to our crews, followed by once a week, 5 weeks in a row, hands-on training with a live human model. We then replicated the same idea where we had a standardized model be ultrasounded by the crews that were trained and senior residents who had received ultrasonography training. And at that point, this study actually was positive in terms of our crews. Our crews actually were non-inferior, and in fact, in this study, showed slightly superior images on a standardized model. So it was graded blinded by ultrasound and other EM faculty. So all the images that were obtained were graded blinded by experts in the field, and then we analyzed the data. And so I think the big takeaway from this is ultrasound for EFASTs in the field, something our crews can do with a reasonable amount of training. This is not something where you take a couple days, put them on a 1-day, show them on the body course. That was round 1 and that failed. This was a round 2 type study. This was the only one we published. Basically, if they have a pretty good intensive course with a lot of hands-on, they're able to show that they do a great job in image acquisition.
Then, Des, let me ask a quick question, just make sure I was clear. The one thing you were checking them on was for like a FAST exam. And when you say EFAST, what do you mean by that?
So we're looking at the lung sliding and evaluation for pneumothorax.
Okay, got it. All right, I just want to make sure everybody knew what you were. I remember this before, so I just want to make sure everybody knew exactly what you're doing. So that's really cool, then, in a way, right? So that's good. Now, did you have a select group of people? Was there a selection bias, or is it everybody across the board?
Yeah, so we had to basically use one of our agencies. It was in Lake County at the time. So it was an agency that was able to be available for this amount of time in this intensive training. So it was a single agency paramedic level group. They were all different ranks. So we had captains, lieutenants, and general field medics.
But that's fine, just as long as it just was a select group, you went across the whole board, and that's even makes it stronger. So
yeah, they allowed the whole agency to train on this, which was really neat.
So when you present it, that'd be a great comment to make, and that so they're because that's the first thing that came to my mind. So that's very cool. Anybody else have any questions? What's good about this is it gives us a chance to kind of critique it a little bit, so that when he gets there, he does a much better job. So this is really cool that all the Florida people are presenting. So that's great. Anybody else have a comment for him or a suggestion or critique? Okay, Chrissy, do you have anything you want to comment about?
Just to thank Dr. Fitzpatrick for letting me be a part of this, and I'm excited to see everyone there.
Okay, good. So did you find out? Oh, sorry, I just dropped my phone. Did you find out yet where this is when and where you guys are going to present it?
No, but I will, as we're on the call, I will continue to work on that.
Okay, got it. Okay, good. Okay,
Hey guys.
So, hey Peter, how are you? We just got through Dez's talk about looking at the FAST exam and all that, and it was great. And we gave him some suggestions or thoughts about it. And then so it's time to move on. If that's okay, Peter, I can turn it over to you. But let's go ahead and we can hit it up right away with Terry. Okay.
Yeah. Do you have the numbers for the meeting so I can put it up on here? Is it?
Yep. Hopefully someone did it for me, but it's 16598. 16598.
And then what about Maine?
Maine Eagles is going to be 99. 16599.
Okay, perfect. So I have just a quick PowerPoint with all the stuff on it. So I'm gonna just share my screen real quick. Can you guys see? Hold on a second.
That's the answer.
You guys see this?
There we are. Now we got it. Yep.
Okay. Beautiful. Okay, good. So that's that. I'll move quickly. So welcome everybody. Sorry, I know we're recording, so let's just keep moving on here. Just for everyone's knowledge, and we'll get the tech stuff figured out for next week. My apologies, but 3 p.m. on Tuesday, NAEMSP is coming up. Starting on the 24th, the pre-cons, we're doing a Florida RA. And then the main conference is 26th to the 28th. It's in Angus's territory there. And then Fire Rescue East is in January.
Hey, Peter,
yes,
the hotel is very near the convention center, just like a little bit down the street. And is that where the Resuscitation Academy will take place there as well?
I don't have the spot, but it's in the same hotel. It's in the same place.
That's the Marriott, the Marriott, whatever it is it's called. I forgot. It's got the JW Marriott, I think. Okay, good. So it's in the hotel, not in the conference center.
I believe so. I'll have to get back to you on that. Tom probably knows better than me. He's on the call, I believe. Tom, are you there?
Yeah, or let us know next week. Okay, good.
Yeah, I'll do that. Okay. So what I wanted to do is to go through the NAEMSP abstracts, and you guys already started talking about one of them, but just a quick overview, and that there's 210 of these that have already been published. These will all be presented during the NAEMSP meeting. They are ranked from 1 to, I believe, 210. So the higher the number, the better it was scored, and the higher ones get oral presentations, and the rest get posters. And so we're right here at this point, I believe, is where I'm merging into, where Carrie is going to be presenting the neuroprotective CPR. So without any further ado, Carrie, I'll stop presenting here, and you wanted to talk, and you and Paul wanted to talk about the data from this abstract.
I'll have Carrie present, but this is a lead-in. We've already had this other proof of concept. This thing is specifically going to be looking at those with non-shockable rhythms. So we know that across the board it makes a difference, but is it specifically also apply to non-shockable? So take it away.
Yeah, I'd also like to say that the scoring rubric does take into attractiveness of authors.
That's why we weren't number 2.
That's maybe why I'm only 12. Yeah, and maybe why. All right, so I mean, it comes as no surprise that we've been doing heads-up CPR for the past couple of years. We started a pilot project with places that were doing heads-up CPR a couple of years ago. That way we have a registry of all the places that are doing it. But this is, Paul's exactly right. We wanted to look at non-shockable rhythms. We know that non-shockable is the majority of cardiac arrests. And like we said in the past, there's really not much we can do for these people. So we want to look at that data specifically at this early stage of the registry and compare that to some known conventional CPR. We had 5 qualifying EMS agencies that are doing all pretty much the same or similar protocol, utilizing heads-up CPR, some sort of suction-based cardiac arrest device, either the manual rescue CPR or the Lucas ITD, and then of course the heads-up component, and all instituting this relatively quickly. They also all rigorously collect their data, every data point from, implementation time, and all of the demographics that you would look at, including being able to get outcomes. Lots of numbers, but for our registry, we had about 965 people. I'm going to refer to my sheet here. We had about 965 people in the registry. Of that, we selected out 467 of those people. The 422 that were excluded initially from the numbers they didn't meet inclusion criteria for a variety of things, usually data gathering, couldn't get outcomes, those kinds of things. And then we were left with 467 people within the registry right now. We took out the VFibs and VTACs, left us about 380 people that were in the registry. We then propensity score matched them with known conventional CPR patients, and we used the Rock Prime study and the Rescue Trial study, and these were used because the data within them is extensive. We're able to match them. We have the outcomes on those people, but it was also used because these are good systems. These are systems that were doing known to be doing a good job. We were able to again exclude people because of missing values, left us about 1,800 conventional CPR people, and then we matched them up one for one on a propensity score analysis. We matched them up starting with time to CPR, and then matched up all the other covariables to a one-to-one, basically everything matched with those people, and then looked at the outcomes. What we found when we looked at the outcomes was the unadjusted numbers. The unadjusted survival to hospital admission was 7.4 versus 3%. The neuro-intact survival, unadjusted is 4.2 to 1.4%. When we did the propensity matching of the matched patients, the survival was 7.6 versus conventional CPR 2.8%, and the neuro-intact survival was 4.2% versus 1.1%. And all of these confidence intervals, odds ratios, all panned out. They were all statistically significant. And then one of the additional findings after the propensity matching was we found that the time interval was important.
Yeah. Hey, if you don't mind, Terry, let me interrupt you, because what you're about to bring up is a really important point, because prospectively, when we came up with the design, we said we're going to look at everybody across the board. And it turns out that about 20% of the people were having really long delays in getting there. So we still included those, even though their survival rates are going to be much lower, and so you're losing it. But when we did look at the data, it turns out the median time, which means half the people, to time for both groups to get there and do CPR from the time of the 911 call was 8 minutes. Okay. But the time to get the device on, the head-up device on, was 11 minutes, was the median time. But we got it on board within 16 minutes and 80% of the time. So I just want to set up what you're about to tell us, because that we specifically said, hey, let's look at 11 minutes, and let's look at half the people, and let's look at 80% of the people in 15 minutes. So what did you find when you did that?
I think if the device and everything is set up within 11 minutes, we found that the neurological intact survival was 6% versus 0.6% in the conventional arm. That's with an odds ratio of 10.59. So basically, the faster you did this, and this is where the saying where I guess Paul's been saying this is almost like an AED for PEA and asystoles, because we can finally do something for these people and affect some of their outcomes. One of the other things, Paul, do you want to talk about the unwitnessed asystoles?
Let me go in, but I want to add to your point, because that was an excellent point you brought up. It not only was like the AED for, in a sense, for these non-shockables, but it had a wider one. It helps AEDs as well, by the way. It helps people who are shockable rhythms. But more importantly is that it has a much wider window. If you're having it was like a 14-fold odds ratio if you got it on board within 16 minutes, right? And so that's really tells you a lot right there. You have a wider window of opportunity, et cetera, and so on. And the time is of the essence. And the system that did the best in all this were the ones that had that backpack system that we've shown before, where they just brought it in, open it up, boom. It's a real true pit crew approach. But to answer your question, we drilled down later. People, I went and made these presentations before, people wanted to know, well, what about PEA? Well, if you just look at PEA unadjusted, it was still like a 10% versus whatever it was, 3%. It was, survival neurologically intact. But the thing I found was most interesting, if I was to ask anybody there in the audience, if you had a person who was unwitnessed arrest and you get there and they got asystole, some systems just pronounce them dead with that, right? So any of that. So I don't know if anybody else works those, and if you do, it's still most people say it's pretty futile. But what were you finding out there, Carrie? What did you find out? Was there any survivors at all in the unwitnessed asystole?
The percentage of the survival was 1.8% in the unwitnessed asystole, and in the conventional CPR was 0.3%.
Yeah.
So
it's like 6-fold higher, and that's what the odds ratio was, right? So
exactly 6.95.
Yeah, but that's no big deal. 2%, that's all they're getting back. But the point is, it's 2% versus 0, or close.
Those are 2% you kind of write off. That's people walking out.
Yeah, let me put this in perspective. There are 500 asystole cases a day in the U.S. alone. 500 out-of-hospital cardiac arrest with asystole presentations. Of those, in our study, overall, about 70% are unwitnessed in both the control group and ours, et cetera. So the point is that if you're talking about 570, so 350 people a day, whatever it is, and then you get back 2% of them, it might be 7 or 8 people, but over a year, it's several thousand people who will go back with function. That's neuro-intact survival.
Yeah, it's neuro-intact. That's the important part.
Yeah. And it's just because the sheer magnitude of the cases, it's kind of cool that you're giving them the chance, and it may change our whole. And the other thing is, these are when we lumped everybody together, including those long responses. So if we are really looking at the ones we can get to in 15 minutes, that may be a lot higher percentage than that's the next thing we're gonna do is drill down on that. That's the next phase of the study. Okay.
This is amazing data. My question for you, Carrie and Paul, is: would you say then that agencies implementing this device need to have it on their frontline vehicles so that they are getting there first, without it being on let's say, a chase car or a captain's vehicle, that type of thing?
Yeah, it makes it easier to also to do the training. If it's always there and it's always right up front, you have to have it there. I think that, just like anything, when you come late to the game, and we talked about this with Paramedic 2, you bring epi late to the game, it didn't have any effect. Yeah, no kidding. So
you have a wider window, but why not have why don't you make your chance 4% to going home instead of 2%, whatever it may be, the earlier you get there. The other issue about that, Peter, is that it was interesting because when I presented the preliminary data without all the stuff you just heard at ACEP, someone said, hey, can we use this in the ICU? I said, yeah, the first-in firefighters could use it. Lifeguards could use it, right? So, and then when they said, how about can it be used in the ICU or the ED? And I go, well, why not? You have it right there, just like people have the Lucas standing by. Why not add these two other things there as well? And then they may even have better outcomes than us as a result, because you're restoring normal flow is what you're doing. And CO2s are up there in the normal range, by the way, which is really cool about this.
Yeah,
so
that's huge.
In other words, we got some surrogate variable saying that you are restoring normal flow.
Paul, do you think that the NFL could use this too?
I will tell you, if they couldn't get an AED there quick enough, this would have helped out a lot. But even if they did, it would have helped out a lot. And I think it would be. I'm feeling like in the 1990s, the NBA trainers approached me to give them some advice about this, and I said, you got to have an AED, and everybody's got to be trained in CPR, have it standing by, and we got those. I see the future that if you're in a fixed location where you may have to do response, that might be part of what you do, right?
Yeah. Hey guys, well, this is incredible stuff. Carrie, can you tell us when you're going to be presenting? Because I have 2 more abstracts I want to review with people on the call.
Thursday? Was it the 28th at 5:30? It's the first session.
Thursday, which was the poster session Thursday. Okay,
the first
gotcha.
session, I believe it's at 5:30.
All right. Well, I really appreciate you representing us, and also Des and Chrissy. I know I missed that part of the call, but I do have a couple of slides to that effect. So let me just put up.
Peter.
Okay, awesome. And I feel bad because I have a couple of slides that I put up, but thanks for doing that.
Is there a reason why we can't next week?
Do what next week? No, this will take literally 3 minutes. What I'm about to do.
Okay, good.
Yeah, because next week I already have other people the whole month on schedule. So abstract number 1 and 2 is what I wanted to show everybody. Because it's interesting stuff. They actually looked at 65 EMS folks and 239 firefighters, and they looked at their BMI, waist circumference, smoking history, blood pressure. You see all on the screen. And then they took a look at, and the results of this were that in EMS, 70.8% had abnormal blood pressure, HDL, or hemoglobin A1C, and 60% approximately by BMI and 64% by waist circumference had obesity. Of the firefighters, more abnormal blood pressure, HDL, and A1C, a little lower obesity, 51 and 42%. And so that's very interesting stuff. So that's abstract number 1.
Okay.
Abstract number 2, which I found interesting. This doesn't really relate to us in Florida for the most part, because not many of us are tiered. But it was very fascinating here that if you had, the question was, did the odds of downgrading a call from ALS to BLS increase depending on whether the ALS clinician arrived either via chase car, on the fire apparatus, or they were with the transport unit? And what they found was, so again, just to clarify, the patient's on the ground, and then it's a BLS call, or sorry, the BLS folks show up. They say, hey, we need ALS. ALS shows up in one of these 3 ways, and then they looked at whether or not the ALS person downgraded that to a BLS call. If they downgraded to a BLS call, they don't have to go, right? And so here's what they found. They found that if the paramedics arrived by chase car, they downgraded by 41.8% of the time. If they arrived by ALS fire apparatus, 49.2% of the time. But if they arrived on the ALS transport unit itself, there was a much lower downgrade percentage because they had no choice. They had to go with the patient either way. So the summary here was that if you have a scenario where you allow the release of the ALS clinician from the transport, it led to a 2.3 higher likelihood of resulting in a downgrade. So in other words, the vehicle that they show up in will impact their decision to downgrade or not. And I just thought that was very interesting, that the conclusion was that if you do have a tiered system, you better look at these downgrades very carefully to make sure that they're being downgraded for the right reason and not just because they can leave faster on the vehicle that they came in.
Yeah.
And so that was that. And just real quick, you already went through this one, but just real good stuff here from Des and Chrissy, looking at the fact that the overall image quality was better in the paramedic group, and and in all these types of, in all these image sections, they were better as well. So I just wanted to stop that right there. So at 12:29, we are done. I did send in the link for the Mobilize site, the full abstract link for all 210 abstracts. So take a look at those. And that's about it. So we're at 12:29.
The number for Carrie was number 12, and what was it for Des?
11.
Wow, cool. Very good.
Yep. Yeah,
Also,
we got 11 and 12.
If they're better looking, they got 11. Okay, got it. Okay, good.
See, it pans out.
And for those of you who don't know, these are just abstracts. So the actual paper may not come out for another year or so. So the beauty of the NAEMSP and the beauty of these abstracts is that this data is going to be published for quite a while in many cases. In some cases, it won't be published ever. So just by going through these abstracts, you really get a good inside view into the early papers that will be published over the coming years in EMS. So that's why I really encourage everyone to go through these abstracts.
All right.
All right.
I'll see you later, okay?
All right, and Angus will switch us on over and we'll join Paul's group. Thanks,
you
Paul.
later.
Thanks, Carrie. Thanks,
What was
Des.
it? 16598. Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay.
All right, we'll get